The blackout arrived without warning, swallowing the city in an instant. One moment, the streetlights hummed and the buildings glowed with their familiar yellow warmth, and the next, everything slipped into silence. Inside her small apartment, Clara sat motionless in the sudden darkness. The hum of the refrigerator stopped, the clock on the wall stilled, and she felt as though the entire world had paused with her. Clara lived alone, and in moments like this, the silence pressed heavier than usual. She leaned back against her chair, listening to the muted sounds outside, the nervous laughter of children in the hallway, the low voices of neighbors trying to soothe each other. Somewhere a dog barked, restless and unsettled, as if it too could sense the weight of the night. Loneliness had become familiar to Clara. Over the years, she had grown used to the rhythm of solitary meals, quiet evenings with no one to share them, and mornings that passed without greeting. Yet, even with time, the ache never disappeared. It only settled deeper inside her, like an uninvited guest that refused to leave. Tonight, under the veil of the blackout, that ache felt sharper, as though the absence of light had revealed the emptiness she tried so hard to ignore. She thought of her neighbors, families gathered around tables, couples whispering reassurances to each other, children curled in the safety of their parents' arms. She, however, sat alone. The darkness whispered to her doubts, reminding her of all the time she had questioned her worth. Did anyone notice her? Did her presence mean anything beyond her own four walls? Her gaze wandered toward the small drawer where she kept forgotten things, matches, old notes, and a candle she had once bought during a storm years ago. Slowly, she reached for it, her fingers brushing against the cool wax. She turned it in her hands, staring at its unlit form, wondering if it would be foolish to light it. After all, what difference could one small candle make in a city drowning in shadows? Still, a quiet pull urged her. Maybe it wasn't about the difference it made to the world. Maybe it was about giving herself something to hold on to. With careful hands, she struck a match, and the flame sprang to life, trembling at first, then steadying into a warm glow. Clara set the candle by her window, its small circle of light spilling into the dark street. As she watched the tiny flame dance, something stirred in her chest. It wasn't much, not yet, but it was enough to soften the silence, enough to remind her that even the smallest light could stand against the darkness. The flame flickered gently, casting long, shifting shadows across the walls of Clara's apartment. From her chair, she could see how the candle's glow spilled outward, reaching through the thin glass of the window into the night beyond. It was such a fragile thing, and yet, in the blanket of darkness, it stood out like a quiet heartbeat. At first, Clara thought no one would notice. It was, after all, just a candle in a city swallowed whole by shadow. But then she saw a movement across the street, a curtain shifting, a face peeking out. A neighbor lingered there, their eyes resting on the glow in her window. Soon, another window opened, and someone else leaned on the sill, gazing out into the night. Clara realized they weren't looking at the emptiness of the blackout. They were looking at her light. Minutes passed, and the soft murmur of voices began to rise from the street below. A few families had stepped outside, gathering together with flashlights that barely pierced the dark. Their eyes kept drifting upward toward her window, where the candle burned steadily, as though it carried something more than just light. It carried reassurance. Clara watched, her chest tightening, a warmth spreading through her that she hadn't expected. It startled her how such a small act could ripple outward. For so long, she had believed her presence went unseen, that she lived in quiet anonymity. Yet here, in this moment, her small flame was drawing eyes, gathering hearts, reminding people that they weren't alone. She saw a mother point to the candle and smile at her child. She saw an elderly man settle more calmly on his steps, his face lit by the faint glow reaching from across the street. Clara leaned closer to the window, her hand resting on the glass. She felt something stir inside her that she hadn't felt in years, a sense of belonging. For the first time, she wasn't just a figure tucked away in her apartment. She was part of something larger, a thread woven into the fabric of her neighborhood. The candle wavered slightly, its flame bending under the breath of the night, but it did not go out. Clara's eyes stayed fixed on it, marveling at how it seemed to hold steady despite its fragility. And in its steadiness, she found a reflection of what hope really was: not the absence of fear or despair, but the quiet strength to shine even in their presence. She sat there for hours, watching neighbors linger outside, some standing in silence, some sharing stories to pass the time. All the while, the candle glowed, its flame carrying something she could not name but could feel deeply. In the midst of darkness, it had become a gathering point, a reminder that they were all still connected. Clara thought to herself that maybe the candle wasn't just guiding others, maybe it was guiding her. 2 hours stretched on, and still the city lay cloaked in silence. The blackout turned the night heavier than usual, yet in that wait, Clara felt something new. She remained by her window, watching as the neighbors continued to glance toward the little flame. Some had returned indoors, but their curtains were parted, their faces still drawn to the glow. Others sat quietly outside, speaking softly beneath the dim sky, comforted by the knowledge that they were not alone. Then, as suddenly as it had vanished, the city stirred back to life. The hum of electricity rushed through the wires, and streetlights blinked awake with a sharp brightness that scattered the shadows. Windows lit up one by one, televisions flickered back, and the familiar noise of appliances filled the air. The blackout was over, but something in Clara told her that what had happened tonight would linger far longer than the darkness itself. She turned back to her candle. Its flame now seemed smaller under the glare of the restored lights, almost insignificant compared to the sudden flood of brightness. Yet Clara could not bring herself to blow it out just yet. She leaned closer, watching how it continued to burn with the same quiet steadiness it had held all night. For hours, it had been the only light in her world, and in that time, it had shown her something she had forgotten: that presence. No matter how small, carries meaning. Clara thought about the faces she had seen, the child pointing upward with wonder, the elderly man resting more peacefully on his steps, the quiet gatherings of neighbors who had drawn strength from a single flame in a window. And she realized with a sudden clarity that she had been wrong about herself. She was not invisible. She was not without purpose. In the most unexpected way, she had mattered. A warmth filled her chest, not from the candle, but from the recognition that sometimes hope does not arrive as a grand gesture or a sweeping change. Sometimes it is as small as a flicker of light that holds steady in the dark. And sometimes that flicker is enough to remind people of their own strength, their own ability to endure. Clara finally reached out and cupped her hand gently around the candle, shielding it as she blew it out. The smoke curled upward, vanishing into the air, but the memory of its glow remained with her. She felt lighter, more anchored, as if the night had given her a gift far more lasting than electricity. When she closed her eyes, she carried a quiet certainty. Even in her solitude, she had something to offer, and that small truth was enough to carry her forward, one step at a time, into the days ahead. Sometimes we imagine that our lives are too small to leave a mark, that our light is too dim to be seen. But the truth is, even the smallest flame can become a beacon in someone else's darkness. Clara's candle reminds us that hope is not about how bright we shine, but about choosing to shine at all. If her story touched you, take a moment to reflect on the quiet power within your own life. And if you feel inspired, share this story, leave your thoughts below, and join us by subscribing for more True Spirit stories.